Hello, everyone, and startups. I hope you all are doing great around your lives. And well, let's have a look at our agenda today. Today, we are going to discuss the entrepreneurial mindset from psychological and behavioral perspective. We're going to, or we will try to answer a question: can entrepreneurship be demystified? And to do that, we have selected two models. The first one is five-factor model, and we'll try and explain this five-factor model through a story that is built around IKEA. And then we have the five P's of entrepreneurial behavior. So let's get on to our journey today. Well, psychologists measure personality through what is called the Big Five factor model, or the Big Five inventory, which assesses how we behave or how we are across a particular set of dimensions. So these dimensions are neuroticism, then we have the extroversion, and openness, then conscientiousness, and last but not the least is agreeableness. So the Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson argues that innovators, entrepreneurs, and revolutionaries, they tend to have a very particular mix of these traits, which are called the Big Five inventory, or the five-factor model. So let's look at these dimensions, each one of them one by one, and how we actually change across these dimensions, or what is the spectrum of change that we can observe or have. So in neuroticism, we have sensitive and nervous on one side, and secure and confident on the other side. Then we have extroversion. In extroversion, we have gregarious and energetic. People who are fun-loving, outgoing, talkative, you know, hanging out with other people, and then they are involved in outward activities. They're very energetic. They are on one side, and solitary and reserved people on the other side. So they don't go out. They are locked up within themselves, and then they are reserved. They usually don't contribute to what exactly is going around them. Then we have the third one, which is the openness. That is on one side of the spectrum, we have cautious and consistent people. The people who are all the time doing same stuff, and they have same formula for everything. So they are very consistent. Or on the same side, we have the cautious people, or this trait, which being cautious lies on this side of the spectrum of this dimension called openness. People are very cautious every time they come across an obstacle. They're confused, they are stuck, they usually run out of solution, and they are they find it very mind-boggling whenever there is an obstacle in their way. So on the other side, we have inventive and curious people. So on this side, when you come across an obstacle, you will find a way out. And similarly, you're not all the time looking at one thing. You are curious about the process, about the things which are placed around you, or which are connected to yourself, or your life, or with your family, with your business. You're curious how the business overall is going on. Then we have the conscientiousness. In this particular trait or dimension, we have orderly and industrious. They are on one side of the spectrum, whereas easygoing and careless, they are on the other side of the spectrum. And last but not the least is agreeableness. in this particular dimension, cooperative and empathetic, they lie on one side of the spectrum, and antagonistic and self-interested, they are on the other side. For example, we can see here the two people, they are looking uh, at their side of these bars. He sees 4 and he sees 3. He sees 4. So no, they are not 4. This is 3. So this is actually the degree of agreeableness. People usually do not tend to agree if they are on this side of this particular dimension. They are antagonistic. They can express their views and they can stick to what they think. So, and they're also self-interested, or we can put it as self-absorbed. Now, in this 5-factor model, how do the entrepreneurs and innovators fit in? Innovators and entrepreneurs, they have to be open. They have to be able to imagine things that others can't. And they should be willing to challenge their own preconceptions. So most of the time, we are victim of a dilemma that we hold an opinion and then we are unable to change the opinion. So opinion becomes a mental disease. We call it opinionitis, just like any other disease. For example, we have the liver disease. One of the liver disease is that can lead to liver cirrhosis is hepatitis. Similarly, when we are thinking, when we are applying our minds, we show inflexibility. We are not open. So we actually are held hostage by our own minds. So we are victim of opinionitis. But the innovators, they are very open. They are willing to change. They can challenge themselves. They so this is how openness actually affect them. So then they also have to be very conscientious. An innovator or an entrepreneur who has a brilliant idea but lacks the discipline and persistence to carry them out is merely a dreamer. So if we go back and see what traits we saw in conscientiousness is here. So you cannot actually afford to lack discipline and persistence. So you have to show, you have to be orderly, you have to be industrious to put all that you are thinking into practice. If you cannot do that and you are on this side of the spectrum, in this particular dimension, you will lack the necessary discipline and persistence, and you will be just a daydreamer and you will achieve nothing. Similarly, the innovators, they have to be disagreeable, or they need to, or they usually, they are on this side of the spectrum. So when we say disagreeable or disagreeableness, it should not be taken as obnoxious or unpleasant, as Malcolm Gladwell put it in his famous book David and Goliath, that this particular trait or the dimension, or if you are on this side of the scale or the spectrum, you don't have to be obnoxious or unpleasant. So by disagreeable means that they are willing to take social risks, to do things that others might disapprove of. This is not easy, to stand with what you think, especially if you are thinking on the other side of the stream, and that is actually challenging some sort of the social structures. So usually the societies, they don't approve disagreeableness. As human beings, we are hardwired to seek approval of those around us. So generally, we are thinking what others might think of, and we try to behave in a way that does not sound very unpleasant to others. So in case you are here on this side of the spectrum and you have a very radical or evolutionary idea and you want to put into practice, and there is a chance that a society will not approve what exactly you are going to present, it is very unlikely that you will be able to put it into practice, and the ideas shall not move forward. As the famous playwright George Bernard Shaw observed, that the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt to the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So you may look unreasonable because you are thinking on different lines. You are taking a different perspective, which may challenge the status quo of the, the the society which you are placed. So to explain these three, or especially these two dimensions of this big factor, five factor model, uh, Malcolm Gladwell has beautifully explained it through the IKEA story. So what is IKEA story now? So IKEA, the furniture company, it was founded by Ingvar Kamprad in 1950s, or maybe earlier than that. And what special he did, his great innovation was to realize that much of the cost of furniture was tied up in its assembly. Putting the legs on the table not only costs money, but also makes shipping the table really expensive. This was the problem. This was the problem that Ingvar actually faced. That the furniture, the raw material, or the human resource, or whatever is required to produce a table was may not be that expensive, but the way furniture was being assembled, it made it difficult to ship, and this is how it was being costly. So what he did, he built a solution. So what he did, he sold furniture that had not yet been assembled. So this was a new thing. This was an innovation in that particular Swedish furniture market. In Sweden, the furniture, like all around the globe, it was sold at that time in an assembled form. So you had a fully assembled table or chair or whatever is that. So what IKEA did, they started selling furniture that was yet to be assembled. So because they were only flat packs of wood, it got shipped cheaply in flat boxes. And by underselling, because the cost was significantly reduced, as it was not being assembled before shipping, and the shipping cost was also reduced, IKEA undersold all his competitors. So this is, we call it openness, because had the IKEA founder been thinking in a conventional way, where a table has to be assembled before it is shipped to the customer, he could not have been able to solve this problem. So when you have a problem and you are looking for a solution, so there are ways. If you are prefix, or your degree of fixation is high, you cannot think beyond whatever you see. The solution, you are on the other side of this dimension called openness. So if the problem was the assembly and the shipping, the solution was not assembling and shipping it in the flat boxes. Now, the IKEA story didn't stop here. In the mid 1950s, IKEA ran into trouble. The Swedish furniture manufacturers, they launched a boycott of IKEA. They were angry at the low prices IKEA was offering. Now, IKEA was in trouble because all the furniture manufacturers, they were not filling their orders. This was disastrous. So now they were looking for a solution again. So the problem here was furniture assembly and its shipping. It was solved here, and the trade is here. This dimension was used to solve this particular problem. Now, the next problem, the angry manufacturers and the suppliers, they stopped supplying IKEA what they needed. They stopped filling their orders. So this was again another problem. What IKEA was going to do now? Desperate for solution, this is where IKEA was operating, the Sweden on world map. Desperate for solution, Camper looks out. This is Poland, and realized that just across the Baltic Sea was Poland, a country with much cheaper labor and plenty of wood. So this is again another openness. He was not trying to look the solution inside Sweden. He was open to opportunities. The opportunities which were only to be seen by somebody who was showing a certain degree of openness. Now, this was not possible in that particular, point of time. The reason, it was 1960s, and Poland was a communist country. It had none of the infrastructure or machinery or trained workforce or the legal protections of a Western country. But IKEA pulled it off. They micromanaged the things and they succeeded where others failed. So this is because of the stubborn character of the IKEA founder. He went to the unpleasant places where others did not want it to go. So this was the conscientiousness. Then there is another striking feature about this IKEA story, that when he went to Poland, it was 1960. The Berlin Wall was going up. The Cold War was at its peak. Now, there were a lot of issues going around, especially the Cuban Missile Crisis issues. Just to see it in the present perspective, as Malcolm Gladwell has put it, that the US retailer giant Walmart is asked to put his business in North Korea. So asking Walmart to put setting up a shop in the North Korea, most people would not even think of doing the business in the land of enemy for the fear of being branded as a traitor. But this was not the case with Camper. He was there to disagree with what exactly was being taken as a norm. So he didn't agree to the norms of the society. He showed an extreme degree of disagreeableness by crossing the Baltic and going into the Poland, which was a communist country at that time. So he found a solution. So this is how we can say that these three of the five traits can be explained through this IKEA story. So we had a problem, then there was a solution, another problem, another solution, and then the way the solution was sought, the places IKEA went, it was only possible if you were here on this side of the spectrum. Being here, being cooperative, imagine the IKEA founder was cooperative and empathetic to the existing culture and the norms and the political structure and culture of Sweden or the West at that time. IKEA may not have existed as it is now today. So then there is a sixth dimension which is not mentioned in the model. And the sixth dimension is typically very important from the entrepreneurial frame of mind, and we can call this sixth dimension as self-exploration. So the entrepreneurs, they need to know who they are, what they know, and whom they know. So usually a big challenge that a young entrepreneur and early startups face is no funding. So if they can do some self-exploration around their own life, their own family and friends, and their own angels, and if they can answer these questions, they may actually find some clues, and they can overcome some of the barriers which may hinder their progress. So when we say who they are, we actually mean what are their traits, their tastes, and their abilities. And uh, when we say what they know, we actually mean what is their education, their training, their expertise, and their experience. And over here, whom they know, it is actually their social and professional networks. So if they can put a chart of these three questions, they will get to know. This is the self-exploration. Before you start looking for any of the external funds and the ideas and the funds, especially for early startups, they lie over here. So self-exploration is the sixth dimension. It may not be the psychological dimension, but for entrepreneurs, this is very important to know what they are, what they know, who they are, and whom they know. Then our last item for today's session is the 5 P's of entrepreneurial behavior. So the 5 P's of entrepreneurial behaviors, they are passion, perseverance, prevention or promotion focus, planning style, and last but not the least is professionalization. So let's look at them one by one. Passion is an intense positive feeling the entrepreneur has towards the business or even the idea behind the business. It comes from being actively involved in moving the business forward. Passion has multiple benefits, such as increasing your commitment to business, which relate to perseverance as well, and inspiring the key stakeholders like potential investors, employees, subcontractors. So this is, if you cannot display passion for your idea, it's very unlikely that someone else who does not have that passion, they are going to come or bring their money and put into your idea or behind your idea. Now, passion is displayed in 3 ways: by looking at the challenges of the business in a creative way, by being persistently focused on the business, and last is by being absorbed by the tasks and concerns of the business. So passion means your idea becomes your life, and you actually talk your idea, walk your idea, you sleep with your idea, and even in your subconscious, all the time you are thinking about what exactly the problem you're trying to solve through your idea. Then we have the perseverance. Perseverance is best thought of as a type of learned optimism, the ability to stick with some activity even when it takes long time and when a successful or unsuccessful outcome is not immediately known. So there is a tendency that we give up. Once we try our idea and it doesn't work, we give up the idea. So the perseverance means we have to stick to our idea, but when we say we have to stick to our idea, it does not mean that we should be striking against the wall. It's learned optimism or the validated learning. You have an idea, you try the idea, you had designed, you had a hypothesis for your idea, you designed a test to test your hypothesis, and then the hypothesis didn't turn true. If the hypothesis doesn't turn true, there is no point leaving the idea. You may change the hypothesis, try again, and keep a record of whatever you are trying. This is what we call validated learning. So when we are persuading, we are observing it through the learned optimism. We are learning, and when you are learning, and learning means it's a validated learning, you are not repeating the mistakes that you have made once. So try again is the way forward, but you should not be mixing the same elements, the same ingredients, same formula under the same condition, then expecting a different result. It shall never happen. Then we have the third one is the promotion or prevention focus. It has two further dimension. We call it the promotion focus. This intent on maximizing the gain, whereas the prevention focus that intent on minimizing the losses. So this focus, it works both ways. For promotion, how can you increase your revenues, and here how can you decrease your costs which are associated with your business. Being a successful entrepreneur involves balancing these two focuses. It's not either that you are looking for the revenues all the time and show carelessness on the prevention side. You have to strike a balance between the two. In an established industry or a poor one, a prevention focus can work well, while a promotion focus can yield better result in richer and dynamic environments and industries. A reckless pursuit of opportunity may bankrupt your company, while a protection at all costs, this may mean you will miss the opportunities. So now this is again a very you know there is a, we can call it there's a dilemma or a paradox that we do not want to lose the first one to be the opportunity to be first one with the solution, and on the other hand we are not going to commit all we have and stand bankrupt at the end of the day. So what we have to do, we have to trust our plans, and when the plans don't have the answer, we have to trust our gut or intuition. Entrepreneurs may have regrets about their choices, but they generally feel better having taken charge of their choice process. This is very important. Then we have the planning style, and there are 5 ways in which the entrepreneurs can actually plan, and they are comprehensive planners, critical point planners, opportunistic planners, then habit-based planners, and last but not the least are reactive planners. So comprehensive planners, this one, they take a long-term view, and they develop long-range plans for all aspects of the business, and they're comfortable with planning, and they act based on the plans they have developed. So they plan it well before, and they plan it in the long run, and they stick to the plan, or they stick to whatever they have planned. For the critical point planners, they plan around the most important aspect of the business first. They act on it and then consider if additional plans are required. It's not a very long-term approach to planning. So for opportunistic planners, they generally start with a goal and they look for opportunities to achieve it. Once they find a good opportunity, even if it is not the one related to their original goal, so they act on it. So this is also related to here. So if you are doing the perseverance, you're trying again, changing the formula, and if the idea doesn't work, so there is no point not pivoting. So these opportunistic planners, they may actually prefer pivoting instead of perseverance, but on the basis of validated learning or whatever they have learned through the experimentation that they have done. Then we have the reactive planners. They are completely passive. They wait for the cues from the environment to determine what action they should take. And last but not the least are the habit-based planners, they do not really plan at all because their actions are directed by their routines. So it is their habit around which their life goes on. They do today what they did yesterday. They don't plan and they don't even tend to react to the changes in the environment. So these are the 5 planning styles. And then we have the professionalization. Within this, we have the expert professionalization, specialized professionalization, and minimalized professionalization. So in expert, these are actually the 3 levels of professionalization. In expert professionalization, what we do when most aspects of the business meet or exceed the industry standards. So there are whatever the industry you are actually working with, there are some standards. So one hallmark of the successful entrepreneur is that they usually do at least one thing much better than average. This average is called standard business practice, and every industry has this standard business practice. So, uh, so in these 3 levels of professionalism, the expert professionalization, when aspects of the business meet or exceed the industry standards. In specialized professionalization, when one or 2 aspects of the business are at this level. And in the third one, which is the minimalized, sorry, it's not specialized, it should be changed into minimalized. In minimalized, when none of the business can achieve the industry standards. So this is how this specialization stuff work. So these are the 5 P's of an entrepreneur. So you have to look for the passion. You need to have passion. If you do not have the passion within you, there is no spark. People can't see the light in your eyes. No one is going to come and put their money at your back, not even your immediate families. So you can display the passion by or through these 3 ways. Then, when you have the passion, that may not be enough. Then you need to try out whatever you are passionate for. You are designing an experiment, you are developing a product or a service, and it doesn't work, and you may give up. If you give it up, you do not hold to the idea that you have, you may give up early, and then the opportunity may be taken by someone else who can build a multi-billion company on the basis of that idea. You should be ready to try again, but you should not be mixing the same ingredients under same circumstances and expecting a different result. You have to do the validated learning. You have to develop your own dashboards. You have to do the experiments. You have to build hypotheses, test those hypotheses, record the result of the hypothesis. And on the basis of the results that you have achieved from the hypothesis, you have to make intelligent decisions whether there is a point to stick to it. You have to show perseverance, you have to persevere, or you have to pivot. If it is time to make a pivot, every company does it. Most of the time, the plan A does not work. Not in huge companies. The companies which we see today, like Google and Apple, their plan A didn't work. You need to have a plan B. But switching between the plans is very important. This should be intelligent switching, and we call it pivoting. And then you should look for the planning style. What planning style that suits most to your own needs, and do it accordingly. And then keep an eye on both the promotion as well as prevention. Keep your expenses in check, and do not actually compromise on either of these two. You have to hold that delicate balance between increasing the revenue and prevention the cost. If you are too obsessed with revenues, you may stand bankrupt. And if you are too obsessed with prevention, means cutting the cost at all costs, you may lose the first inventor's initiative. And then also look for the industry's standard business practice and see how can you fall over here. So this is all about today's session. Hope you like it. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. See you next time.